When you're smiling, the whole world smiles with you.
I was born in China, but brought up in England by white British parents, making me a transracial adoptee. With being a transracial adoptee comes a few challenges, one of which being my identity. Throughout my life, I've experienced a few identity crises. I want to explore the ins and outs of this experience felt by other transracial adoptees like me, and to help others understand the cultural homelessness we face in our daily lives. In one word, I call this feeling like an anomaly. I was adopted from Nanchang, the capital of the Jiangxi province, in 2001. I was one of around 300 adoptees who flew into the United Kingdom that year. It was coming up to my first birthday when I was placed on my mother's lap. My father handed the orphanage workers American dollars in an envelope, and the adoption was finalized. Even though my body was weak, my voice was strong. In fact, I had cried so much in the orphanage, I gave myself a double umbilical hernia, which didn't heal for nearly a decade. My physical health quickly improved, but my parents' next challenge was figuring out how to raise a transracial child.
We tried to raise you with the Chinese culture, but we found that difficult to do. But we did our best. You learned Mandarin at the local school after school, but unfortunately that shut down. So it was very difficult.
Yeah, we took you to Chinatown with all the various cultural events.
Despite my parents' best efforts, I found myself quickly isolated from my Chinese heritage.
A lady came up to you, tried to talk to you in Chinese, and you didn't reply. And she said that there's nothing Chinese about her. She's so English, just very, very English.
This sense of unbelonging would develop later in my life. I have identified this as cultural homelessness, a term used for mixed-race people or those who grew up in a different country from their parents.
Cultural homelessness, I think, is one of the primary issues when the child is removed from their birth family and all that goes with that, and are placed with another family and another carers that don't directly reflect the birth parents' heritage.
How does it apply to the transracial adoptee experience?
Are the adopters in a strong enough position to actually understand what the child needs to know about themselves and actually what their experience of themselves needs to be when it comes to the development and evolution of their identity?
I describe myself as an anomaly. What do you think?
It explains kind of some of those fundamental struggles that every adopted young person or adult may actually have when it comes to kind of understanding their own life narrative and what it actually comes to mean for them.
Do you have any statistics on mental health, suicide or depression?
One of the things that we did in Aboriginal Chinese adoption study is compared those women to the 1958 national census. And we didn't find any significant difference when it came to physical health, mental health, or occupation, which was very, very interesting indeed. I don't know if we explored more of that when it comes to cultural homelessness, whether we would actually get a bit more of a significant difference.
Do you have any final thoughts?
We don't have quite such a clear view on is this issue about cultural homelessness. Maybe that is something that we need to return to.
With cultural homelessness comes the double bind. Adoptees try to balance their identity with the expectations of their ethnic community, but struggle to meet them. Each of our lives is like a puzzle. For transracial adoptees, some of the pieces are grey areas, parts of us that are frustrating to uncover, such as the reasons for abandonment, whilst many pieces are missing.
My double bind was more so the expectations that I would act a certain way because of what I look like, but then, kind of juxtaposed with how I really felt. I definitely feel my difference when I'm in a room full of white people, but also when I've tried to connect with other Asian people, I felt that that's not quite right either. So that's led me to feel, very isolated at times. I think there's been an increasing kind of awareness of giving adopted children, transracially adopted children, access to some form of their culture. And in the absence of that, that can definitely lead into the isolation.
I had a traumatic time in the orphanage. Do you think the trauma we felt translated into our later lives?
When people go through trauma before they're able to talk, so pre-verbal trauma, often what happens is that those experiences do stay with you, but because you haven't been able to sort of create a story or a narrative around it, that it goes into something called procedural memory, which is more so you might find that you're acting from a place, but you don't necessarily know where it's coming from. As children, we are so dependent on connection for survival, so that ability to be responded to, that knowledge that you will be responded to, is really important for creating a sense of self.
Parts of our past may always remain a mystery, and the gaps in our individual puzzles remain unfilled. Naomi shared her experiences with being a transracial adoptee, revealing the profound impacts on her as a person.
They said I was British, but people didn't treat me as though I was British. As a young adult, it didn't really bother me. I'd learned to deal with it. And now having a child that's very similar to me makes me realise that maybe biology has more to it than I'd previously anticipated. At those milestones in your life, I think it makes more of a difference.
Do you have any worries for your child?
There's maybe an added layer of concern that I don't have the cultural background to teach them.
Identity can be managed, and we can see professionals and even go on social media. Even so, it's the adoptees' parents which have an integral part in building a strong sense of identity and belonging within their child, so that their child doesn't grow up feeling like an anomaly.
Support the child's curiosity and value their history.
They are the parents, they do have the power, and it's up to them to create a safe environment where these things can be talked about.
Think really carefully about whether you can offer the child the cultural background that they need and the diversity of environment that they deserve.